All right, welcome, Team Wilpers. So we are here today, a little special session here. We're going to talk with Matt Wilpers, Mr. Matt here. And one of the things in working with Matt I've seen is along with his amazing opportunity to make a big impact on everyone else, is that he's no different than you, me, or anyone else. That these things, there are things that come up in our life that challenges our training a little bit. And what we wanted to do here, I was talking to Matt about this. We've actually talked about it a few times, but we saw this as a great opportunity leading into the Chicago Marathon for an opportunity to kind of talk about what's going on behind the scenes, how we do things at Team Wilpers. And this is not unique to me and Matt. This is across the board for all our coaches and all our athletes. We have very similar discussions about how to navigate, when you're a full schedule athlete, right? So I'll kind of leave it there. And I'll start with asking Matt, we were, you really came off Berlin, rocking it. You were super pumped on that. That was a goal that we started when we first started working together. You were talking about like, hey, I got to get my marathon time down a little bit. I know I'm a lot better than that. And you really put the pieces together in a really busy schedule to make it happen. And so when we were talking this year about races, you had Tokyo, and then you knew that Chicago was on the list. I'm just, I know some of the inside things, but let's peel back the curtains and kind of talk about, what was your original goal for Chicago? Let's just start there.
Yeah, Berlin. Well, yeah, I'll go back to Berlin for a second. Berlin was lots of progress. The goal was to break my old PR, which is at New York City. I did a 253, I think it was, or 254.
Yeah.
And so the goal was to beat that. And we ended up going 241, which was a huge leap. Felt great. But when you think of Chicago, when everyone talks about Chicago, they're like, oh, it's fast and flat. It's a great course, great PR course. And in your head, you get to 241. You're like, well, let's break 240. And, I was thinking about how I was going to be on paternity leave for leading up to the training, have a good segment of paternity leave in my head, thinking it's like, oh, I'm gonna have time to train, blah blah blah. I won't have my Peloton class load, and then the reality set in. So that paternity leave is no joke, and that your schedule is now dictated by another human being versus you. So going in, I was thinking PR for sure, and now of course that tune has changed.
Yeah, just a little bit. I remember you're like, yeah, it's Chicago. Let's go, buddy. Let's get under 240. And I'm like, well, what's going on? And you're like, yeah, baby's on the way. I'm like, when? Just, oh, that's like right in that's in the crux of it, buddy. And you're like, yeah, we got it. I have time off. But let me ask, like, do you see this when when people come in the studio, you have conversations with people about, how much time people think they have, how much space, either, before travel, before big events, like we all, do you see that pop up on your radar where people maybe, think they have more space? What do you think about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. I think it's human nature, and I always talk about I'm a coach, and I love having a coach. I love working with Justin because it's always great to have another person's perspective, on your ambitions, to take it from outside looking in, because sometimes we get lost in our own ambitions, and we lose check with kind of reality. And when you have someone that has tremendous coaching experience like yourself, it's you get that outside view, but a very informed outside view, and it's incredibly helpful. To come into our meetings every week. Every week, I talk with Justin, and we go through not only last week's training but the next week's training, and we're also taking a look at how are we doing on track of our overall goals for the training season, which really is the year. And so when I have these discussions with people, I like to have the similar discussion with them of like, okay, what's on your calendar? What are you thinking about? Have these like a very brief session of what you and I do, because it can be so helpful to have those check-ins. And also, as a coach, at Peloton, I stare into a camera all day. So I get these check-ins with people when we're doing photos or whatever to see what's going on, because it helps me refine my coaching. It helps me think about, well, what are people planning for, thinking about doing, but also what might they be struggling with, and that could be talking points for future classes and also social media and stuff like that. So, I absolutely have these same types of, you know, situations with people. And I'm like, okay, did you think about, the best thing that happens is I can throw them a thought. Did you think about that? Did you think about this? And have a quick conversation. And it's fun. It's a
Yeah.
fun process.
A sounding board, right? Like entrepreneurs do it, they get business coaches or even mentors, as we are, there's all different levels, right? Some people, you have to be a little bit more steering the ship. Some people you have to be, by them, like your assistant captain. And some people, sometimes, I would say with you, sit back and, okay, yeah, if that's where you want to go. All right. Like this, just watch out for this one or two things. Right. And so, go ahead.
Oh no, with working with me must be very interesting, because my schedule is largely dictated by, a lot of my workouts are dictated by Peloton. So I get a production schedule, and it's like, boom, here's this big load of work that's being done every week. And then we look for pockets of where we can get quality training in, and what's happening on, what's coming up on the calendar determines how we're going to use those pockets of work. And those pockets are few and far between. So it's either like great work gets done or great work doesn't get done. And we have to refine expectations.
Yeah, yeah. So on that topic of expectations, like how did your goal evolve, you know, uh with, baby on the way, baby here, just how did it evolve for you to get to where you're at now? And then maybe we can talk about the goal a little bit now.
Yeah, I think going in, it's like, before having a baby, I just, as a soon to be parent, you're thinking about, well, how do I, number one, I need to make space in my schedule. I need to make space in my life for this new human. And so you start making that space, and then you start thinking about, well, how do I be the best example? And you start buttoning up your life in 20 million different ways. And then the baby comes, and it's like, boom, like reality check. Like, you think you're ready, but you're not. You're not ready at all. And then I guess the biggest challenge for me post baby is like when you're number one, during the light, depending on how much help you have during the day, that can be challenging. But the sleep deprivation to any level is makes it really tough on workouts.
Yeah.
And granted, we were lucky. Wife has done an amazing job with scheduling help as much as possible, but it's your old workout time might not be like what used to work for you, might not work anymore because of the baby schedule.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that throws a wrench, that can really throw a wrench in everything. And so it's having to be, I had to, take a new look at my goals, and say, well, what's priority here?
Mm. Yeah.
And the priority is clearly the baby. And so I'd rather just, instead of going through this training and beating myself up every training session for not either making it or feeling good or whatever, I'd say, okay, let's put the goal, let's chill out a little bit on the running goals. Let's focus on the baby, so that at the end of the day, I'm able to keep a positive mindset and enjoy everything versus just being miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously we're coming at this perspective like from the guy's point of view, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
You know,
by
like
far the I said, someone said this to me the other day, like, they're like, congratulations, man. I'm like, you should be congratulating my wife.
we all are. We all are. Both for dealing with baby and you. So, no, but it just I'm pointing that out, right? Some people could look at it and be like, "Gee, he didn't give, the birth, but that's why I'm trying to frame this. We have this discussion, like, yeah, what are the priorities, right? Priorities are mama, baby, then work, and then this stuff, which for you is really tied to work, right? And so this idea that yeah, that's not lost on us, that mama bear is in charge here.
Yeah.
But this idea that one of the things you touched on, right, though, is this idea that readjusting your goals, right? And so, um, I see this, we all see this at Team Wilpers. These are conversations we have across the board. It's not
Yeah.
our first time in our company dealing with someone who's having a baby, or their partner's having a baby, or some kind of change, or, really catalyst, right? Can you dig into that feeling, that realization a little bit more of like what was the catalyst, or what did it feel like to change from, I'm going to go run faster than I did in Berlin and go PR because the opportunity presents itself. I think it's there, to, hey, I really need to, check yourself. Like, I need to check this out, check back here, and like, just talk about, if you can, a little bit on that process. Cause I'm always curious about that, because it could be a lot of tension for a coach of like, when do I say something? When do when do we think that ship has sailed? Like, how do you go about it? And I really think it's really the athlete has to, be ready and available to have that conversation. And, we definitely did, a couple times. But can you kind of double click on that a little bit for yourself, of like what that was like? Because
Yeah, a couple things.
that's really behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say number one, as a coach, and as an athlete, having run marathons before and going, having done a previous marathon where I set a PR and knowing what work I needed to do to get to that point, that gives you a baseline. It's like, okay, I had to do this to get to there. That means I need to do that either a little smarter or a little harder to get to the next level.
Mhm.
And if I'm not able, if I see my schedule, I'm not able, like, or showing up for this workout's not able to get there, well, you need to figure out why and fix it fast, or you need to adjust your expectations. I
Mhm.
just know that. As an athlete, it's like, okay, well, something's got to give right now, and
Mhm.
this is out of my schedule. You added a list of priorities. This is the thing that's going to have to give, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like talking with your coach. Like, I talk with Justin. I firmly believe that one of the coach's jobs is to provide the least amount of training to get you to the place of your desired outcome. Because with the least amount of training to get to your desired outcome, you get the least exposure to injury.
Mhm.
And therefore you're trained smart. You're also effectively using your time. And that's where, like, coaches give you bang for buck there. And it's really helpful to optimize your time. And time is, to me, is the most valuable commodity. I think coaches will always exist. It's great. And Justin's always thinking about, like, okay, what at minimum needs to get done for you to achieve this. And I started not being able to achieve those minimums. And I was like, well, I'm going to have a come to Jesus with Justin here. so,
Which
so
looked a little bit
all those
like,
meetings come to Jesus is where we're like, okay, A plus B is not equal C equal C. And so I'm like, all right, well,
yeah.
you start processing this thing, and it's that's why it's good to talk it through. And I'm like, here's what I'm thinking. And your coach usually lets you know, like, okay, that's valid, or yeah, you're overdoing it. Because oftentimes, in my coaching experience, I found that guys over project what they're capable of. And
Mhm.
oftentimes the ladies under project. And it's great to have a coach to talk about that with. But anyways, that's how I arrived at the reality that my goal is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, two things I heard you say there, and this will kind of transition a little bit, is like, we talk about minimal effective dose, right? And a lot of our clients hear minimal, and it's like, no, effective. What can you absorb, right? And when you're getting inconsistent sleep and different stuff like that for whatever it is, right? Sometimes it's like, well, you can't absorb the training that you are doing, or there's reasons why we're not getting it in, right? And I think it was like, okay, like, we went from, okay, let's focus on a big long run, because your work generally supports, the easier stuff and the kind of moderate stuff. It's usually we're missing out on the bookends, long,
Yeah,
very long, and the speedy stuff, right? Which
speedy stuff.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, VO2 max and whatnot, right? Which was a success, I think, that you had for, Berlin. But when I started not seeing it, it was like, okay, like, having principles, right? To me, it's like, it doesn't change. What's the minimal effective dose? Well, it's like, can you get junk mileage in? Like, while the baby's sleeping, can you get 30 minutes on the tread, or,
Yeah.
15 minutes, or stuff like that? And most people, right, are like, if it's not 30 minutes, and if I didn't like huff and puff, or I'm dead on the ground, it's the workout wasn't worth it. And I was like, just get junk mileage in. And that was the catalyst, right?
Oh, and that's such a brilliant, brilliant point because there's this something that we talk about in the longevity discussion, which is called all or nothing thinking.
Mm, mhm.
And all or nothing thinking is like it can wreck your fitness.
Yeah.
And it was wrecking my fitness, to be honest, until Justin and I had that conversation because I was just like, okay, if I can't go out and get this phenomenal workout in, then like I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
And really, he was like, dude, just go out and get some junk miles. And I'm like, okay. I start squeezing in these runs, and one thing led to another. All of a sudden, I'm getting some quality workouts in. That did help bring me back from the dead.
Yeah. And I think people get stuck in, who said it? I think Mark Twain or something, comparison is the thief of joy,
Oh yeah,
and like when we're comparing to ourselves, we're often the harshest. And it's like, look, we're not going to run what we did in Berlin. And even going in, I was a little sus, I was like, like you're talking, I went through the things. I'm like, just, we might have to switch. Right. And so I think in coaching sometimes is how do you foreshadow a little bit, but
yeah.
not, knock down the athlete. And that's what we try to do is like, hey, like if this happen, I'm afraid this might happen, right? And just say like if that happens, we might have to shift so that when we got there, it wasn't like, I was like dragging you, out of the playpen, like, by your socks, like, come on, we got to go home. Like, it's like, let's go. But this leads me to the big question. And it really comes back to, why we do what we do, like, okay, if no PR, then why line up
Oh,
this Sunday, and put the bib on? Like, why still do the marathon if it's not
ah,
going to be a PR?
man, it's so fun to be out there. Like I'm just yeah, that's a great question. And when I think about just running the marathon, number one, it's like having run the Chicago Marathon. I've always wanted to run the Chicago Marathon, and say for some reason I come back and do it again in the future and come back actually better prepared. Having done it once, like it's like running a hill the first time. After you run a hill the first time, you're like, okay, it's not that bad.
Mhm.
Next time I'm gonna like destroy this hill. Same thing with a course. So next time I come back to Chicago, maybe I want to like crush it. But also it's just like I think we talk about finding the love and joy in what you're doing and in fitness. And it's just like there's days where you're out there running for fun, and there's days where you're out there running for like to perform. And while I'm definitely going to give it a good go, and it's hard for me to show up for a race and not give it a good go. I'm going to be out there focusing on having a good time, and I'm not going to be getting bent out of shape over not not getting my PR because I have my own internal expectations. But to that point, we're still coming out there with a plan.
Yeah.
You're still coming out there with a plan. It's just a different plan. That's all.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that you've beaten in my head. It's good to come out to these races no matter what the plan is, but to have a plan and to work on the process of executing a plan, because when you're given plans in the future, you'll be that much more successful at executing those plans. And that's one thing we did in that half marathon recently.
Yeah. It's, yeah, you kind of touched on this thing. It's like, I've said this before. It's like, I had a mile race a couple weeks ago and,
Oh, the lung busters,
oh
man.
my god, and it was for a reunion. My college built the track for the first time ever, and so we went back and all the guys are like, "Let's do a mile race," and it was FAT time, like fully automated. It was like legit, and I'm like, I don't know what I can do because for me this year has been exercising. The past couple years have been training, and I'm like, I need to kind of for myself just recalibrate here because I wasn't having fun, racing, and so you know one of these things is like like the software has not changed since college or high school, but the hardware has changed. Like, things feel a little bit harder, but I just know like I have a big engine right now from cycling, but I don't have, the running, like the
Yeah.
pounding and stuff. So this idea though, to have a plan, I told my wife going into the race, I know what effort I want to do. I don't know if it's 5:20, 5:40 or 6 minutes, and it ended up being like 5:26. So I'm like, yeah, that's what I wanted, right? But this idea then is if it's not PR, I'm not showing up, or some people will still have missed all the training, compared to what we did in Berlin. We missed a lot, right?
Yeah.
But then they'll go in with the same philosophy, the same strategy, right? And I think that's a big missed opportunity. Like if it's super hot out, like it was Boston 2 years ago, people had the same strategy, and I we adjusted, most of us adjusted our clients backwards to accommodate for that. So, you had a half marathon, and do you remember what you said to me that you're going to do for that half marathon?
Oh, I'm gonna go blast this thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna smoke this. I've been feeling good, and I was like, Matt, you've been to work 1 week, you're on a high. All right, you're feeling good, but the progressive overload this is going to be a
Detrimental.
well,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with where your fitness is at, right? And we all do this as coaches, is sometimes have had the courage to say, I don't know what the answer is, right? But to me, it seemed risky, and it was like, let's work on an opportunity to practice a strategy.
Yeah.
And get you on there. So for Chicago, our strategy is going to be more heart rate based, right? Because it's like, all right, I know what heart rate you can sustain for a while, and I just don't know what pace that's going to be. Now, some coaches or companies might see that as a cop out, but we've had success with that at different times of figuring out, like, all right, let's manage the one thing we have control of, which is your effort, right?
Yeah.
And heart rate is a good
I
representation.
love it because during the race, when I'm looking at you give me a heart rate cap. You're like, you're not beating this heart rate cap. Like you
Mhm.
need to stay under here. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, how fast can I run
Mm.
at that heart rate? So like how can I dial in my technique that much to keep my heart rate that low and my breathing so that I can go as fast as possible at this heart rate? And I think that is a wonderful pressure to have.
Yeah, yeah. Because it takes your mind too off of this mile, and it's like, you can focus more on your control versus, like, I don't know. I find sometimes when people are in a tough spot and they only focus on pace, if anything changes, heat goes up in these fall marathons.
Oh
Like
yeah.
Berlin was 81 degrees. They missed it by a few hours. Like by the end of the race, it was cool. The next day was 62 degrees. So, to me, it's like, why do we put on the bib? I think it's really important as you go into Chicago or whatever race you're going into, whatever event, is to have this idea of, why do I do this? And, it's not always about PRing, right? It's nice when that happens, but it's kind of like a collection of all these micro wins lead to a big win. People don't PR out of nowhere, right? So, focusing on some different things can be helpful. Let me ask you this last
Yeah.
question. Whether it's a baby, job change, life change, etc. What tips would you give to others? Navigating, you know, uh, maybe a little bit more full schedule or some transitions or changes. Maybe like 2 or 3 tips, or even one. Like what kind of stood out to you that you've seen this from other people, but now having gone through it in a little bit more recent time, what's your advice, bud?
That's a great question. I really think that mindset dictates a lot.
Mm,
It's like trying to maintain a positive mindset through everything and like keeping the big picture in mind. It always is super important. And knowing your priorities, going in with your priorities and knowing that. And then also you got to be organized. Like organization is the key. And so organization and mindset, I would say, are the two biggest things to focus on in my opinion. And yeah, because when things get like things are going to get challenging, you got to stay positive. And at the end of the day, it's like if you stay on top of your organization and say, okay, what's happening when, but also like what's going to give. If you have something like a baby that's coming in, it's like one day can be completely different than the next, and you got to give yourself some grace to be able to pivot. And so, like yesterday, I went for a long run at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Worst time to go for a long run. It is so hot. But at the same time, I was just like, this is the time that I have been allotted by the rest of the priorities of my life. Like, let's go out there, let's have some fun, let's get it done. And I had a great run. Wasn't
mhm.
perfect, but I got it done. And I got organize, positivity, and flexibility. Be flexible. And
Awesome.
I think those are the main things. And outside of that, it's go talk to your coach.
Put it on your coach to do all the worrying. This is what we tell people. You pay me to do the worrying. Stop worrying. Throw
Well,
it.
oftentimes I text you and I say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Like
Mhm,
bounce your
mhm,
ideas off your coach, and having that discussion about how to best use your time can be super super valuable because you can be stuck in the middle of something and just like, oh, I'm just not. I don't think I can squeeze this in today. If I do this tomorrow, here's the plan, and you're just bouncing things off you has been super helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, buddy, you're ready for Chicago. You're ready to put out an effort, and not as ready as we were at Berlin, but nonetheless, you toe the line with a strategy, a plan, and then it's your job to problem solve. Once that gun goes off, I'm sitting on the sidelines watching a tracker. There's nothing I can do.
Well, the thing
So
is too, I think
you'll have
every
fun.
race, every event is like a is a learning experience. You're
Mhm.
gonna learn something about yourself out there no matter what. And
Oh,
if you're not, and that's why you want to come in with a plan. It's like, okay, test yourself a little bit, and what are you gonna walk away having learned, and what are you gonna carry forward? I've learned a lot this training cycle. I've done a lot of trying out different nutrition, trying out different shoes, all kinds of different things. And so even coming into this race, not going to get a PR, but I've learned a lot already, and I'm going to learn some things on race day. And so I'll still walk away a better runner.
yeah, for sure. All right, Matt, we appreciate you.
Thanks,
All
dude.
right, I'll see you.